You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. It's James, and today I have a great comedian. He's been in it for a long time. His new Dry Bar special just dropped on Wednesday, and if you're anywhere in SoCal, if you're familiar with the SoCal comedy scene, you know this guy. You've seen him. Ventura Harbor Comedy Festival, Comedy Festival, Ventura Harbor Comedy Club, JR's Comedy Club. I mean, if you're anywhere in SoCal, you've seen him. And so please welcome the very talented, the very kind, very gracious, and funny Randy Lubas. Randy, welcome.
Thank you, James. That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. I actually learned about you when I think you ran Ventura Harbor Comedy Club for a little while. Is that right?
Yeah. I owned it for 12 years. We opened it up, and we purchased the club from another owner in 2008, and I stayed there until the end of 2019. So in the course of that run, we did, shows all. It was a full-time comedy club with kitchen, restaurant, 2 bars. And we had for 9 years I produced the Ventura Comedy Festival there, and it was at that location and many other locations in Ventura. So a pretty widespread footprint over in Ventura County, but originally opened up JR's Comedy Club in Valencia, California, 25 years ago, and it's amazing. still going.
It is, and it's like packed. Like every Saturday, it's packed. You guys. Like, if you're in LA and you complain about like small crowds or whatever and stuff, whatever Randy is doing, literally whatever he's doing, he should write a book about it, because it's working every Saturday. Because I'm lucky enough that I've been granted the ability to host at JR's, and first of all, great crowds. Secondly, always packed, and just so much fun. Like, I've done a lot of clubs. I've traveled all over the United States. I've been to a lot of different clubs. I performed a lot of places. Always a great crowd there. I've never seen people be so excited about comedy, just know like, this is a good time. We're here to have a good time, and that's it. It's amazing.
It's funny. When I started doing stand-up, there weren't comedy clubs. There were only maybe 5 across the country. There were a couple in New York, a couple in LA, and there was one in Detroit. But at that wave in the 80s, a comedy club was virtually opening up in every city every week. It was just exploding all over, and there was this incredible excitement. I remember when the first comedy club opened in my hometown, Pittsburgh. I had been hired to become the house MC, and so right off the bat, the first weekend we were there, every show was totally sold out, and people were fencing tickets out in front on the first weekend. And I don't know, somehow I tried to create that same sort of feel that I grew up with. And as a result of that, I think that the audiences that do come to the shows are really, really fun audiences and ready to have a good time. We opened up the JRs in Simi Valley a little over a year ago, and the same thing. The people that come to the shows are awesome audiences, and people love to perform there. And so we've had a nice run, and it's still going.
It's amazing. So you started comedy in the what year did you start comedy? Just kind of give us.
I probably, to be truthful, I was doing little things that would lead you into comedy as far back as high school. I could imitate people, and I would do things to entertain people at parties and things like that. But in college, I entered a gong show and a talent contest, and that was the first time I actually did stand-up comedy per se, in front of live audience. And then when I graduated from college, I started going to anywhere I could go. One of the first places I ever went was a strip club. It's called Sunny Days Stage Door on Route 51 in Pittsburgh. And this guy that I had gone to college with, who was doing a little comedy improv, said, yeah, they'll put you on stage there. So I go in, and supposedly Sunny Day was one of Bill Haley's Comets, Bill Haley and the Comets.
Right.
I don't know if that's true or not, but he was a saxophone player, but he could play two saxophones at once.
Wow.
Anyway, that was his claim to fame. But he had this little strip club, and he said I could go up in between the strippers, and I did. And I had nothing to compare it to. I just knew, hey, I want to get on stage, and this was not a great strip club. These were not the high premium strippers. These were women with stretch marks and bullet wound heels and scars and things like that. But there were small crowds, but they listened to me and they liked it. And I was doing impressions, and if I did the impression right, people would clap at the end. And so I got hooked immediately. Within minutes of being on stage, I knew that I never wanted to stop.
That is awesome. That's the thing is comedy, like once you do it, it feels like it's the best feeling in the world. It's hard to describe to somebody who's never done stand up what that's like. When you do it, you go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe first of all, I can't believe someone's letting me do this. And secondly, I can't believe other people are listening to me do this. Like what's going on in the world?" And it's amazing.
Well, one way you can explain it to people is you say this: everyone, no matter who you are, at one point said something that someone laughed at.
Yeah.
And if that ever happened, even if that only happened to you one time in your life, and you search your memory back when it happened, you'll remember it felt good.
Yeah.
Well, then all of a sudden start saying, okay, you got 5 minutes to do it, and it happened over and over and over again for 5 minutes. Now all of a sudden, wow, and it's an addiction, and it becomes part of your life, and it becomes what you want. Very few people in the history of stand-up comedy ever stopped. A couple of
Yeah.
people. Steve Martin stopped, Woody Allen stopped, but most people that do stand-up comedy continue to do it in one form or another throughout their life.
Yeah, and that's true. I think it was Judd Apatow's book or something I was watching with Judd Apatow where he actually started stand up, then did a bunch of writing, and then came back to stand up. Like he said, it like never left his blood. He never didn't want to do it, but he just couldn't do it. So then, but it had built up in him, and he had to like go do it once he could go do it again. And his wife even was like, "I never knew you did stand up comedy." Like that's a funny thing to keep from your spouse, you know. It's like that's amazing. So you started in Pittsburgh, and then what brought you to LA? What brought you out here and to start comedy out here or doing comedy?
Well,
out
I
here?
knew I wanted to, audition for acting roles. I wanted to, be in the heart of show business. So I came out and got into an acting class right off the bat, and I would study acting from 10 in the morning till 10 at night. You could
Wow.
sign up for the whole, all month of classes for one price. And I would go to every class I could go to. And then I would do stand up at night or on the weekends. And then as soon as I'd run out of money, I'd go work on the road. And it was catch 22 because so many things I came so close to getting, but missed because I went out of town to make money.
Oh,
And in those days, what was shortly after I got out here, I got to LA in '84. And soon after I got to California, the clubs had gotten to the point where I was headlining comedy clubs on the road, and the money became very, very good. So they would fly you in, they would take care of all your expenses and pay you very, very well to do it. So I would try to get enough money, come back, audition, get things going, and then you'd run out of money and go back out again. And it was a difficult thing. A couple of ones I got really close to. I was in an acting class, and we did a showcase for a guy named Michael Zanella. He was a producer, casting director, and he was casting one of these Star Trek movies.
oh wow.
And he came and watched the showcase and asked for 3 of the actors to audition for that movie. And I was in Houston, Texas, and it was like a Thursday. And I called, I said, look, I'll fly home to audition for it. They'll allow me to do it. And they said, no. I talked to him himself, and he said, just come Monday. So I finished my week. I go home Monday, and sure enough, the 2 guys that were there both got cast in the movie. That I go in, and he goes, look, I'm going to have you read, but Leonard Nimoy was the director. He said Leonard Nimoy decided he wanted to get it done, so they cast somebody else, but don't worry, I'll bring you in for something else. I would have had a really, really nice part in that movie, missed it by one day.
Oh, wow.
Then I studied with a guy by the name of Jerry Paris, who directed Happy Days, but he was most originally known for being on the Dick Van Dyke Show as an actor. But he became part of that whole cabal with Gary Marshall and all those people. And he he wanted me to audition for Gary Marshall. And the day before I was supposed to do this showcase for Gary Marshall, I've been auditioning for game shows. And I auditioned for this game show called Catchphrase. And I was just really good at it. And it was a brand new show. And I was getting all the answers like lightning, right? So they called me and I was scheduled to go on the show on their pilot episode. And they said, don't worry, we want to make this look good. You're going to win. It's going to be great. And it was all set to go. And then Jerry Paris asked me to do a showcase for Gary Marshall the same day. So I called up Catchphrase. I said, I'm sorry, I have to cancel. I have a chance to do a scene in front of Gary Marshall. And they said, oh, we have your name, everything's done. This is not good. And I said, well, could I do it another time? We can't guarantee that, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, oh, well, I came out here to be an actor. That's what I'm going to do. So I canceled it. I go to do the scene. This was a scene that I'd worked on with an actress in the class, and Gary Marshall's there. And we get up to do the scene, and the girl freezes. She can't do the scene. She can't. She's standing there, can't speak. She's terrified. She's frozen. So I never get to do the scene for Gary Marshall.
Oh my God.
So in the meantime, I think I've blown it with Catchphrase. So I went on another game show called Joker's Wild.
Oh yeah,
and
I've seen that
one where you pull this thing and you Joker, money, and you were at the subject of answering a question, gaining the money, and I lost because of the wheel. I didn't do anything wrong. I just lost because of the wheel, and I got rice-a-roni as my gift. And then as soon as I'd done that, they called me from Catchphrase and said, yeah, we want to reschedule you. And I go, oh, I just did Joker's Wild. And in that time, you could only do one game show a year and 3 in your lifetime. And so that was my first one. And Catchphrase didn't even last a year. So that was it. I never got to go. But that's kind of thing that happens. That's show business, right? So the bottom line is that I came out here in '84. I moved to here to become an actor and to, become whatever your career evolves to in California. And that's the journey we've been on.
Yeah. And that's amazing because like a lot of people have that same kind of story. It's like they come to be one thing and then it kind of turns a different direction for them. Maybe they don't get to do the acting, but they end up writing or directing or whatever else it is. And I think that's impressive. And I feel like I'm on the same journey as you. Like I didn't come out to be an actor though. I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to be a director and a writer. Like I wanted to be Kevin Smith. That was like my entire goal was to be the next Kevin Smith. And instead I got pushed towards stand-up. Like, people will always say to me, you should go do stand-up. You should go do stand-up. And I thought you had to be a famous actor already to go be a stand-up, right? Because if you watch, like, Tim Allen had a TV show, but he was a stand-up, but I didn't know that it was vice versa. Like, you could be a stand-up and start. And so that really pushed me that way. And then I just auditioned for a game show for their first season. I can't say what it is, but like it sounds like it might move forward. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like you. This is going to be amazing.
Well, the funny thing, James, is this, that the great thing about stand-up comedy is if you can do it, they can't stop you. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing. See, my wife is an actress, so I've been around actors, actresses, and stand-ups my whole life. But if you're funny, you can find a stage. Yeah. They can't stop you. You could be the greatest actor in the world and have studied and have technique and are tremendous and never, ever get a chance as long as you live. And that's why you have to have what I call the artist's soul. The artist's soul manifests itself in you and you can't not do something. In other words, even if you're not making money as an actor, you can't not act. So you will do theater, you will do community theater, you will continue to audition while you're, being an Uber driver, whatever it is, you won't have the ability to stop because you have the artist's soul that doesn't come out of you, and you will continue. And that's what happens to people in show business, because everybody would love to be a movie star.
Right.
Every good looking person would love to be a movie star, right? They'd love it. Yeah. If it was easy to do, everyone would be doing it. Right. But it takes many, many things to fall in your favor for it to happen. I've along the way seen people that have made it quickly like that, see people that took them years and then finally made it, and people that just found someplace in the middle that kept moving and rolling forward. It just and you never know. You know how you said you can shift gears and move, and you have to continually reinvent yourself in show business, no matter who you are. You have got to figure out what's next, because you're going to get older. The world changed. Things have happened that, obviously the way people did stand-up comedy in the 50s compared to what you can do doing stand-up comedy now, completely different. What could have been on TV in the 50s, 60s, some of it could never be on TV again. It's time changes, cultural things change, and we change.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing is, I hear a lot of comedians who want to go do the road, but it's harder than ever to do the road. When I hear, older comedians who've done it say that was just the way it was before. Like, you could go do the road with, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Now you have to have an hour. You have to have some kind of thing that you've done, and then you could go do the road. There's a lot more steps to get there. What do you think the biggest hurdle is for new comedians? Because you see a lot of new comedians coming in and out now. You're engaged in that world. What's the biggest maybe biggest piece of advice you can give to a new comedian starting out in stand-up?
Well, there's a few.
Okay.
The first off, the thing you need is stage time, and you have to figure out a way to get stage time. And I say this from a person who, when we were starting out, there weren't comedy clubs in Pittsburgh. So what we did is we would find the local neighborhood bar and convince them to let us bring comedians in. And I was with a stable of comics that started out of Pittsburgh, and we would all find something near where we were in the city and put shows together, and find any place at all that would let us get on stage. So number one, and you got to be creative and think out of the box, whether it's doing shows, anywhere that'll put you up, whether it's a church or a fundraiser or outdoors or something. You gotta get the stage time to get better. But the number two thing is I talk to a lot of young comics that get to New York or LA, and then they want to go do the road. And I'll say to them, you're where show business takes place. You're in New York, you're in LA. That's where it will happen. To go out to Iowa and do the middle act at some comedy club and break even, the only thing you're going to get is your jollies, because that's not where it happens. So what I suggest is figure out a way to get your stage time around where you live. I mean, there are, when I say, someplace you can drive to, someplace you can still get to and get back, from wherever it is you're living. Go do those weekend gigs. There's plenty of gigs around, and create your own. But in the meantime, if you've gotten yourself to LA, or you happen to have already lived here, or New York, stay there. Set up, continue to go to try to pound those doors in, the people that are there, the gatekeepers. Let them know, when they say something to you like, you didn't pass the audition. Okay, right. Can I audition again? They'll say, okay, when? A year from now. Then take out your calendar and say, great. See, today is October 22nd, 2022. On October 22nd, 2023, I'm writing it down. I'm going to be here, and you're going to like me that time. You just say that to them right then and there, and then you let them see you over the course of that year. Say, don't worry, I'm working, and I'll be back if you happen to run into that person. But then go back exactly that day and do it again, and don't take no for an answer. Just keep going and pounding on the door. Eventually, you'll get in.
That is a great advice. I mean, I hear a lot of comedians say, "Oh, don't start in LA, don't start in New York." And I started in LA, and it has been more difficult than some people that I know who started in smaller markets and said, "Oh, I'm doing, an hour every weekend at this place." And it's like, wow, we've been doing it the same amount of time. I'm doing 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes if I get lucky, to do stuff. So it's very interesting that that's how the world works in those two cities. Now in New York, you can be hitting more mics and more shows in one night than you can in LA. It's hard to get all that stage time. What is your process for developing this? You have that new special. If we haven't mentioned that, Randy has a new special on Dry Bar called Raised by Engineers. how did you? What's your process like for writing new material for that? What's your process for putting that special together?
Well, that was that's an interesting thing. There's a couple of interesting things about that. One of them is that I'm proud of that special for a couple of reasons. But number one, because I hadn't done stand up in a year and a half when I stood up and did that special. I did it
Wow.
right. If you watch my special, people are wearing masks. We had just started to come out of COVID, and it was the smallish crowd, everyone wearing masks. And I hadn't done my sets in a year and a half. You know,
Wow.
I was very lucky. My friend has a little club in Vegas, and he let me run it a few times the week before. But I literally hadn't been doing stand up for a year and a half because of COVID. And so I had to jump up and do that. The process of it was, it was by that time I had a lot of material. So I had material to choose from. Was putting it together in the right order. I had to write a few new bits to tie it together. But the process was basically figuring out the order to put material in. And then where did I need to add new material to tie it all together with a bow. And I was able to do that. But nothing got edited out of it from what I did. It was everything I said is there.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, so I was really pleased. And in terms of developing material, you just have to look around. I mean, I do two types of material: observational material about things that annoy me, and then the newer comics. The new generation of comedians talk about themselves. They're storytellers. They talk about themselves, and that has created a situation where people get discovered and advance their careers and become stars. When I was starting out, it was sort of the way Seinfeld did it. It was observational comedy. You didn't know really that much about Jerry Seinfeld when you watched his stand up. You didn't know where he stood on issues. You just knew he would talk about the things he saw and what he
Right.
thought was funny about them. It's called observational comedy. That was the school of comedy that I grew up on. But I also did impressions and characters and things like that incorporated into it. And now, I will talk about my wife and talk about my real life and marriage and things like that. And it's a combination, but I still will do observational comedy as well. So
Yeah.
that's
Observational is
kind
my favorite. Like when he used to, I would go to see Jerry Seinfeld every year in Las Vegas. That was like my one big trip that I would invest to go. Like, I'm gonna go watch this. And even though it was usually the same set, he might throw in a couple of new jokes or whatever. Just like that observational style is so amazing, and I do miss it because you're right. There's not a lot of people that do observational comedy anymore. It's kind of storytelling or talking about themselves, or kind of the same. We almost kind of hear the same material over and over again, just different points of view.
Yeah, it's very, very much about yourself. And hey, I'm not a judge of I
Right.
say whatever works for you, fantastic. I remember people used to turn their nose up to prop comics, and some of those prop comics have become some of the most successful comedians in the world, and they happen to be great people. And
Yeah.
yet other comics that were struggling along, acted like they were better. Hey, whatever your journey takes you on, go do it and be good at it. And there's no rules. There's no rules in what you have to do in show business. None at
Yeah.
all. You know,
Now you're also like a writer and a voice actor and stuff. I mean, you do a lot. Like how do you do so much? I'm impressed that I'm able to write and do stand up and improv and teach things, and that's my job. Like, I literally don't have a day job. I all my stuff is related to comedy and podcasts and all this. How do you do all these things? You're a comedian, actor, voice actor, writer, producer. You run the JR's Comedy Club. You tour. Like, you go on cruise ships. You're gone. How do you what are you taking? I want to take the same thing.
you know, not only that, I'm a personal manager. I'm
Oh
managing a
my
couple of
gosh.
comedians. Uh, it's funny. Somebody will say to me once in a while, they'll say, "Oh, are you not?" Like, I walk into a restaurant or something. "Oh, not working today?" I go, "I'm always working." It's like I'm always working, but it never feels like work. It's kind of funny. I have to confess, it did feel like work when I was going back and forth to Ventura. So that's why I'm
Right.
so pleased that I'm not doing that anymore. But, now, like you listed off the number of things that I do, like, in the last week, I did a voiceover audition. I communicated with a theatrical agent. I'm looking out for two people's careers as their manager. I book JRs. I send out the email blast for JRs. I take the reservations for JRs. I was up there last night and did a set. Um, I I had to secure locations for New Year's Eve for both locations, Simi Valley and Valencia. And tonight at midnight, I'm getting on a flight to get on a cruise ship tomorrow. So it doesn't stop, but it feels good. It feels good to be busy. I had another great conversation with a friend of mine, introduced me to a woman in Minnesota that wants me to put together a comedy festival for her. So I might be producing a comedy festival in Minnesota next year. So
Awesome.
all of these things are balls that are in the air. In the meantime, like you said, I am a writer. I've written 2 scripts that it's very hard to get people to read. I've written so many treatments and things, and I still pitch ideas for shows. And there's always the dream of the next big thing. Can I sell a show? Can I get a movie produced? And you keep doing that. You have balls in the air, and certain things get moved to a back burner, but you don't forget they're there. And when the time comes, oh, guess what? I just met you. You know what? I got just the thing you need. And it happens that way. So you just have to keep positive and using positive energy. A long time ago, I think it may have been my wife told me a great thing that was sold to her, and that's activity breeds activity. The more things you're doing, the better things are going to come. I was just a judge at the World Series of Comedy in Las Vegas, and 2 or 3 great things happened as a result. I went down and I was an industry panel at the Big Pine Comedy Festival at the Mic Drop Comedy Club. Good things happened as a result of it. So, you just keep busy and good things happen,
Yeah. And that's true. My wife always calls it having 1,000 irons in the fire, where you just constantly have things going. I'm always doing the same thing, working on podcast. I help other people produce stuff. All those things. And then one thing where you go, and sometimes, like you said, you put on the back burner, you go, that's going to sit there for a while. They're like, I don't think anything's going to happen with that. That's the thing that comes forward. And next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, now I got to work on that. And then something else moves. And it just is a game of musical chairs almost of
right.
business. So.
And like if tomorrow, one of your pitches happen, you would have to devote much more time for that. And then you'd have to either find somebody to help you out, do the other things you were doing, or put them on pause, or stop doing them, or whatever it is. But you'd adjust, and the ones that were concurrent, you would find a way.
Yeah. So what is your, now you're from Pittsburgh, you probably love to go back there and do stand up when you can. Besides there, what is like your favorite place to go and do stand up? Like what city, if someone says, hey Randy, you can go to any place you want and do stand up, what city do you know you're going to go have fun in?
Well, I would always definitely have fun in Pittsburgh because I still have lots of friends there.
Right.
But I've got to tell you, I have been having so much fun this year working on the cruise ships, and specifically Carnival cruises, because you get to do, first of all, most of the time, you're the only one on the show. So you do a 30-minute show. You're the only one there. They have comedy clubs on the ship. They're always packed. So you're in front of 300 or 400 people, and they're there having a good time. They're on vacation. And I don't really do any blue material, but they actually say to people that come to the comedy club shows, if you're easily offended, this is not the place for you to be. And so you don't worry about necessarily anybody complaining like you might on the other cruise lines. Some of the other cruise lines are very conscious that if anyone complains, they'll address it. They'll tell you have to take something out of your act or change something. But with Carnival cruises, it has been so much fun. So you're the star of the show. You do at least 5 shows on every cruise, sometimes as many as 9.
Wow.
And you have to have 3 different 30 minutes, which makes you want to write more, because people that like you will come back to your shows. So instead of having to have them say this was a repeat show and people walk out because they just saw you do that same show, you're trying to build it up. Now I've built up to the point where I have 5 different half-hour shows.
Awesome.
But I'm still working because the last 2 are not as perfect as the first three, because the first three is an accumulation of a lifetime of stand-up. So you're trying to make everything equal, everything just as great. And that's been really fun. It's been fun to open your mind and become more creative, do more crowd work. You know, lots of muscles of a comedian that you exercise that you don't always get to do. And so it's been great fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Now, do you find yourself setting time aside to write specifically so you can work on those 2 hours? Or you just kind of have just as it comes to you, you write a new bit. Like, how's that work for you?
I don't set a time to do it. More of what'll happen is I'll think about something and I'll say, you know what, I want to talk about that. And I'll start on stage, really talking about it. I'll just start throwing it out there in between material that I know works, right? So I try a new bit in between stuff that I know will work. So if it doesn't work, I know what I saved myself, okay? And then I'll know if it has promise within 2 or 3 times. If I can't get it working, or I'm semi getting it working, then I'll write it out word for word and say, how do I tighten this up? What could I substitute here? Is there a better word or a better thing to put there? And then I'll work it that way. But I don't necessarily set a time and then put the pen to paper and try to write. The only time I'll do that is if I'm writing a humor column, which I've done over the years. When I advertise in these monthly magazines, they'll say you can put a humor column in there to try to plug your venues. When I have to do that, you know, it is sort of clockwork. You have to do it. You sit down and you write it. And a lot of that stuff I have incorporated into my act later. But usually the stuff that I'm looking forward to do now is some little thing will bother me. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't like it when people call me boss in a situation where I'm not their boss. Now I got to try to figure out a way to make that funny. But it's just a little irritation to me. You know, I don't like it when they say, here you go, boss. And I'm not your boss. I'm just happen to be a customer here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've got to try to figure out, can I make that into a bit? So that's sort of how that'll work.
That's awesome. That right away, I thought of Boss Hogg from Smokey and the Bandit and all that stuff. Like those shows, like there was a lot of people in like the 70s and 80s. Their character was boss somebody or somebody boss. So that's kind of funny that's a thing. And then boss was also used as like a word to mean like cool and stuff at one point, right?
And it was also used by slaves to refer to their slave owner.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. So yeah, there's like there's so many plays on that word that's a very interesting premise because I would have never thought of that. And that's great. That's how your mind works. You're used to that observational style comedy. So you hear something like that and you go, "Oh, there's something here and it annoys me, so I want to talk about all the ways that boss, is used or whatever and stuff." That's amazing. All right. Now, do you ever teach comedy? Have you taught comedy? Have you been like a comedy coach or anything like that?
I have. I've done stand-up comedy workshops and had a couple of my students do extremely well. One of them, Trevor Wallace, is exploding all over the internet and packing theaters, I think, in rooms. He took my stand-up workshop when he was 17.
Wow.
And a couple of other people have done real well. Yeah, I have. I've done it. I did it in Ventura probably 5 or 6 times, and I think I did it even once in Valencia. So yeah, I've done it, and I do private coaching too as well. But usually, someone will ask me for that. It's not something I'm soliciting or trying to find. But if somebody wants me to help them, I will. And I really, right now, if I was coaching someone, I would coach them to use the comedy style that is of today, as opposed to. I teach them joke writing too. I mean, one of the exercises I do is we explore the way a monologue joke is written for late night. If you watch a monologue on any late night show, and look at the structure of how it is a true thing juxtaposed to something you made up. And I always do that. And one of the things that I'll do then is I'll ask everybody to bring a newspaper, and I'll switch. You don't get to keep the one you brought. I'd hand everyone a paper. I say, okay, find me a joke. And then I make them go to the newspaper, and somewhere in that newspaper, there is a joke, and they have to do that. And that's one of the exercises that I always do. But yeah, the actual monologue that I want them to write it in the form of the way comics are succeeding now, and that's mostly talking about themselves and storytelling and telling things that bother them or things that are personal to them,
Right.
and then I show them where the jokes go. So
Yeah. I like that. And monologue writing is such a hard style of writing comedy. I mean, even though you're given the setup, right? Because the setup is usually the headline or some information that's in there. Even though you're given that setup, coming up with something original for that punchline can sometimes be the most difficult part of that entire thing because you're like, I've heard that before, someone said that before, or whatever, and you're struggling to do it. I work with a podcast that I help write monologue style jokes, news jokes for the podcast, and I have to write 20 to 30 every week. And sometimes I'm like, where am I going to come up with an idea for this? Even though I'm writing them all the time, I'm like, we said something similar 3 episodes ago, so I can't write that or whatever it is. But that's one of the hardest styles and is also one of the most fun styles. So
and it's
I
one
love
of
that
the
you do
most lucrative styles.
it. Yeah, if you get
One of,
hired by one of those late night things, I wish.
one of my
But
clients, one of my clients just wrote for 3 years on the Late Late Show. So
wow.
she's off and running.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Randy, where can people find you? Where can they find the Dry Bar specials on Dry Bar, guys? If you need that, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you if they want to get private coaching or they want to talk comedy with you and stuff like that?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and I'm also my website is randylubas.com. They can hit me up there. The best way to meet me if you're a young comic is come someplace where I'm going to be, and see if I'll put you on stage. Yeah, I guess that's the best way. You could go to my website or message me on Facebook, Randy Lubas. It's easy, and
Yeah.
on the Dry Bar, if you enter the code Randy Lubas, no space, all caps,
Okay.
as secret code, they'll give you a free trial, and you could watch
Perfect.
my special and with a free trial.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the show notes so everybody can use that and get a free trial and stuff and watch it. I mean, and everybody, this is true. Randy is one of the kindest people ever. He really does want to help comedians. He really loves comedy. I was introduced to him through Paul Douglas Moomjean, who's been on the podcast a bunch of times, a great friend of mine, and he introduced me. And Randy has since then really taken me under his wing and really tried to tell me things and help me and give advice and talk to me, told me stuff after a show when I first met him. And it was like, I felt like, not like you're my dad, but I felt like a dad getting dad advice. Does that make sense?
Well, I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. I've tried to help people all along the way. It takes nothing. It doesn't take anything from you to try to help someone else. I mean, if you see something like not long ago, I knew a friend of mine was casting a film, and he needed a Latino actor who could dance to do a part in this comedy where he had to dance. And I searched my mind, and I knew there was this guy who I had met out in Ventura, and I'd either met him at one of the comedy festivals. I'm like, who is that guy? And then I started thinking, who is he? I've got 1,000 names in my phone. I started looking through the phone because I couldn't think of this guy's name. And then sure enough, I found it. He just goes by Marquez. And I got him an audition for the movie. Now, he didn't get it, but he was so grateful he had a chance, the opportunity for a SAG film. And he was perfect for the part. They just, I don't know, for whatever reason, there must have been somebody a little more perfect. But,
Wow.
and I had nothing to gain from it.
Right.
But I will I'll do that whenever I can. If I can help somebody, I'm always happy to do that. You just, it's just good to have good energy around you.
Yeah, and it really is positive. And Randy does great stuff. And if you guys want to, I recommend checking out JR's either in Valencia or Simi. They're both amazing places. They're both always full of great comedians. I mean, Don
Yeah.
McMillan was there when I got to host and do stuff, and I was like, wow, this is just amazing. You feel like you're in a magical place.
What's funny is the original JR's we opened 25 years ago, and we were inside a Marie Callender's restaurant for 20 years. And in the course of being in this little 100-seat room, Larry Miller loved the room. Elaine Boozler played there. Emo Phillips played there. Sean Wayans played there. Dana Carvey played there.
Wow.
Tom Green played there. All of these people loved it,
Yeah.
And these are people that didn't need to be there. These are people that didn't need to be in a Marie Callender in front of 100 people. They weren't doing it for the money. And I've just been blessed to have lots of great friends and colleagues that do stand-up comedy. And we've been doing these little shows for years. And you know, Don McMillan's a perfect example. It's a guy that gets paid $15,000 a show
Yeah.
to do a corporate event, and he'll come do it and be grateful for the time.
Yeah, and he was amazing. It was amazing to watch. And we were lucky he did his AGT set for us before he went back to do AGT. So it was like we're getting to watch like behind the scenes. It was so I was like this is exactly what we want to see when we see comedy, is like a magic happening. So
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again, Randy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm going to put all the stuff in the show notes. Go check out Randy's stuff. Go check out his new dry bar, Raised by Engineers. It's amazing. He's a hilarious guy, and he's great. And we really appreciate you taking time. Thanks again, and have a good one, everybody. Bye.